What's going on, everybody? Day 2 for the Miami Hurricanes fall practices was today. Again, saw about half practice or so periods inside the indoor practice facility, and then they finish up out here on the outdoor practice fields with the Green Tree and Cobb Stadium. Let's get right into it. I focus a lot on the secondary today. I know a lot of question marks with this defense. There's a lot of things I want to get into with the defense, but just starting with the secondary, and it was great because when we go in there, we don't exactly know which position groups will be right in front of us based on different practice schedule. For example, wide receivers, we had a chance to see them on the first day, and they actually did their individual drills outside, and they kind of flip around. But defensive backs, cornerbacks, and safeties were right in front of us. I focused a lot on those guys. I think there's a lot of question marks or a lot of uncertainty with the amount of new players that they have in the secondary. Obviously, they want to be much better than a year ago, and Corey Heatherman's defense is really predicated on a lot of communication, particularly in the back. You know, Charles Brantley had a chance to talk with him about that at media day, and he's saying, look, we want to be real loud, and that's kind of the mentality, and communicate with each other. Ask Heatherman about it. They want to be loud and communicate with each other, even if the call might be incorrect. He just feels like it's more important to be on the same page. And watching individual drills, obviously they're not working on that, but on the individual drills, watching that, watching one-on-ones, watching the half-line drill they do, basically half field there, where they're just kind of working against wide receivers there. You know, it's interesting watching them because there's so many new faces, and the two guys I paid most attention to, and I'm gonna have a full video of all the defensive backs that I got video of, but the two new guys, Jacoby Thomas, a safety coming over from Tennessee, and then also Keontae Scott, a cornerback who was at Auburn last year. Those two guys weren't here in spring ball, so I focus a lot on them, and I think both of those guys will be prominent players in the secondary for Miami. You know, I think Scott's gonna kind of handle that nickel role. That's where I see him. Kind of envision him, and a guy that can kind of mix in his ability to tackle, also some cover stuff. You know, he kind of at that 6 foot 195 range, and just I thought he looked good in drills today. You know, just kind of watching his movement and the sizes there. You know, sometimes when you see listed sizes, it kind of varies of what it actually looks like. And same way with Jacoby Thomas. You know, he's a guy that's trying to really elevate his status. You know, from the role he had at Tennessee last year, and looking to kind of have a lead role at Miami. You know, you're looking at Poyser, a guy that we saw in the spring transfer over from Jacksonville State. And I think that those two guys right now, you know, Jacoby Thomas is certainly going to have an opportunity to be one of their top safeties. And, you know, watching him go through drills, I think he moves well. You see him, his size is impressive. He stands out literally. You know, he just has good size, good presence at that safety spot. I think safeties, it's so important, not just being able to cover, but you got to be able to come up and make tackles. And we're not able to see that. Obviously, they don't have pads on, not full pads. And I do want to mention this. Short practice on Saturday. There'll be no availability for us. We can't be out here. And then on Sunday, they might go full pads, just to keep that in mind. But Jacoby, you know, and just watching them one-on-ones. And the defensive backs in general, it's just a tough thing to be able to guard a guy on one-on-one situations. And safeties, guarding tight ends, I don't think that's really always telling the true story of how well they cover or anything like that, because safeties in one-on-one situations tend to get beat. It's just kind of the nature of position. I just think back on my first season covering the team out here at Green Tree practice, was watching Sean Taylor, the great Sean Taylor. He would go one-on-ones, and he wouldn't have successful reps as great as he was. You know, I just remember that specifically. It always stuck with me. But I do like Jacoby and what he's bringing to the table there in the secondary. I think he's certainly a guy to watch for. And then just looking at the cornerbacks, you know, I think it's quite a battle. Guys with experience, you got some returners. You got Damari Brown, for example, back from injury. OJ Frederic dealt with that spring injury. They're trying to get him back at full strength as well, and I know he's excited. Feels like he's going to be full go and all that stuff for season. And you know, those two guys, but they mix in. You know, you got Ethan O'Connor coming over good length. You know, I think, you know, he's got to be a little bit tighter on some coverage things. I think also his drill work is always paying attention to what Coach Etheridge wants him to do. I just think, but he's a guy there. And then also, you know, Xavier Lucas. There's a lot of excitement with Xavier coming over from Wisconsin. And to me, just watching these two practices, I mean, and also the spring, I mean, he just looks like their best corner. I thought he made some good plays today and some drills, you know, kind of staying in the vicinity. You know, I think he's a good coverage guy. He's got great size at that position, and I think you're looking for him to be the top cornerback on the team. Again, kind of mixing these other guys. You know, you got Damari, OJ, and then also, you know, with O'Connor there, and then you got Charles Brantley kind of fitting in as a smaller corner, different than those other four. certainly those guys have good size at the position, and Charles is trying to find his role on the team as one of these firecracker personalities, as he mentioned. But I think it's important. And I think fall camp's going to be big for all these guys to try to quickly be a cohesive unit. And I'm really interested to see how this whole group in the secondary really comes together and connects in fall camp. It's hard to fast forward everything because they really have to be on the same line, on the same string there in the back. It's not just corners on one side and safeties doing their own thing, and they do integrate, in certain position drills. Today they kind of did both. They're working together on some stuff, and then also they split them up, and they even split, the way they do it, they kind of split the nickel backs off to another group. So there's really 3 defensive backs groups kind of mixed up doing their own thing to try to get the most out of their skill sets there as they're working with the coaches with the different things. But again, I think the secondary, to me, I think they did a great job of going to add in some pieces, but we'll see. For me, this is just how I feel with the secondary. I think it's a little bit of a wait and see. We'll see what these guys look like. I'm not ready here to declare how great they're going to be or how good they're going to be. I think we're going to see how things kind of go throughout fall camp, and as the season goes, as it gets started. You got Notre Dame in that first game. You got USF there, third game before the Florida game. So you want to make sure you kind of get your rotation going, and I think that'll be key for fall camp as they kind of decide what roles they want all these guys in and how they kind of see fit. And I do think it's going to pay attention. They have to pay attention to what kind of receivers that they face on the other end as well. Just a little bit more about the defensive backs, and I'll switch to another position. But Jacoby Thomas did have a nice play. I forgot to mention this, but he did have a nice play, nice pass break up on the sideline right near where we're at. Almost had the pick, but he, right on the sideline, and did deflect the pass. That was good to see. But a couple other young guys, maybe guys to pay attention to. Dylan Day's a guy that the coach and whoever's been coaching him, whoever's been here, they've said positive things about Dylan Day and the potential that he has. Good athletic guy, and you're kind of hearing more about him, and he's doing a good job as well, just kind of staying in the mix, and I think he's the guy to pay attention to. I'd like to see him kind of really excel on special teams if he's not going to be one of their primary safeties, but do well in the secondary there as he kind of continues to grow in his development. Amari Wallace, freshman safety, had a really nice interception on one-on-ones, kind of just cut in front of the receiver there in the middle of the field, made a great read on that, so a good interception by him. That was great to see. A few other notes with the defense, and look, the way it's gone is I paid really close attention to certain position groups. I haven't watched the totality of every single position group the way that I would like, but I'm trying to get as much video out there as possible. But I do want to touch on the defensive line a little bit. I had a chance to talk with some of those guys at Media Day. Ahmad Moten, I touched on Matt Merritt being my favorite interview of that day, but Ahmad Moten as a player, really enjoyed hearing what he had to say. He's just a really passionate guy about the University of Miami. Glad to be here. He's back, one of the few guys on the team that's been here with Mario Cristobal since day one, and Ahmad's going to have a role on this team, I believe. There at the defensive tackle spot. I like his energy. I asked Akeem about him, just the passion that he kind of brings, and he said, he's done a better job, because he did say, look, there's been times that Ahmad sometimes get a little too excited and things like that, and his emotions, but he's done a much better job of that. I think that's great to hear. And to me, when I hear that, it's just a guy that's just kind of continuing to mature, continuing to develop, but I think he's going to be a factor for this defense. I think this defense does need energy like that, passion like that. I think that they need that. I think some of even their top guys, I just think that they need the leadership, particularly on defense. I think it's going to take some time with all the newcomers that they have. But I will say this too, Ahmad said it, Akeem says it, Akeem the other day wearing a shirt that says enough. What the defense did last year, these guys that did return, Wesley Pasaint, you touched on Frederic a little bit earlier, but these guys that were on the defense last year, they know that what they put together last season wasn't good enough, and they got to be much better. And they want to be part of the success of this program. They all understand that, and I think they're really taking it to heart, I guess is my point, that they really are understanding what last year was about. They want to be better, they're working to be better, and they understand they want to be a key part to the success. And that's kind of a takeaway I have from totality of these leaders on the defense. Ruben Bain, haven't mentioned him. I'll focus more on the defensive line soon. But Ruben, just his energy, he just seems to be in a really good place, really good mood with everything right now. Another guy that seems to be in a great mood, and it's a guy that just really, since he stepped foot on campus, to me, I kind of made some comments to another report afterwards, just talking about him, and it's Mark Fletcher, a guy that is probably one of the most, or if not the most respected player on the team. Just the way he goes about everything, and just his personality, his energy. And he talked after practice today, one of the 4 players that did. I already posted the interviews, so definitely check out the channel. But Mark is a guy that just seems really happy at this point, you know, and I know last year was really tough for him, the personal loss that he suffered, but also remember at this time, and I asked him a year ago at this time, he essentially wasn't really cleared. You know, he said he couldn't walk at this time. He was still trying to come back. He got cleared just before the Florida opener, but just dealing with the injuries he dealt with last year, you know, it's just much different than how he feels now. He looks great, feels great. You can see a slender upper body right now, and he's got a strong shoulders. Like, you see the physical changes. And he's still sitting at about 225 pounds. That's about the same. But talking with David Lake, he actually got this number at Media Day that Mark said that he cut his body fat percentage from 17 to around 9 right now. And that's a huge increase with guys. And when you hear that, it makes sense because of what you see and then kind of how you see him. So I think he's in a great spirit. I know I touched on running backs after the first day. Another note with Mark, I had a chance to ask him about the drills that Coach Merritt has them do. I'm always fascinated by that. I've shared that in the past too. But Mark said something too. He said, like, Coach Merritt does a really good job of kind of doing drills that, you know, kind of runs that they have in their offense. You know, it's not just doing a running back drill here or there, but they try to, like, all the technique things that they want their running backs to have in an offensive run, you know, a run play, they kind of do that in drills, you know, how they follow, how their techniques go and things like that. And Mark really pointed that out with some of the drills that they do. I thought that was really interesting, and it makes sense, obviously. But I just found it really interesting that it's not just kind of like a basic, you know, run around and kind of do running back drills. That there's a point to what drills they're doing based on the run plays that they like to run in games and in practices in their playbook. So that's going to do it for me today. Again, I could go through a lot of different positions. I'm going to continue to do this, and I'll continue to touch on more positions rather than focus on certain positions like I've done the first couple of videos. But I do want to pass this along. I want to show you guys this book that just came out, 100 Years, 100 Games at Miami. They didn't ask me to do this, and I don't get anything out of it. I was just given this book, and I just want to pass it along to you guys because I think you might find it interesting. And it's available now. It came out last week. It's at the Miami Team Store, so definitely check that out. If you're interested, I just want to pass it along in case you haven't seen it. But it's really good. I was kind of flipping through the kind of a history of games with great photos, and they kind of do it by series too. So good to check that out. Again, 100 Years, 100 Games. Like I said, just to pass it along. But I want to thank everybody for watching. Looking forward to the next one. And then just a reminder, on Saturday, they're going to have a lighter practice, so we're not going to be able to be out here for that. And then Sunday, planning on being back out here and providing more updates. Looking forward to that, but just want to pass that along. It's crazy. It's going to be practice 3, practice 4, just right around the corner. It goes fast. And now we're into August. So season opener not too far away, but looking forward to providing more updates. Thanks for watching. Have a good rest of the day and take care.